Democracy Now! This morning with Herb Boyd and what's the guy named Tyson? Yeah, Tyson really got into it. Really got into it, you know. But I think the publication, you know, it's not just the inclusion of tidbits of presumed sexual scandal. That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. What you need to consider fundamentally is what was the consciousness that created this work. You see, it is this consciousness that we should be interested in. Because once you understand the consciousness, you will be able to define what he says. Rather than say, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't. I don't think we can just bullseye the writer's intentions. We must include Marable's consciousness as the overall shaper of his intentions, as well as his method. You know, Marable was a freshman in college in 1969. This stuff happened in 1965. He got out in 1971. And since that, he has been attached to academic institutions since 1974. Smith, Tuskegee, University of San Francisco, Cornell, Colgate, Purdue, Ohio State, University of Colorado, Columbia. It is no denigration of his life to say that Manning was an academic, a well-principled one, but an academic nevertheless. And what I mean by that, people who separate theory from practice. People who think that theory is sufficient and that it just should not be joined to practice to understand reality. In 1974, Marable joined the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA. And for a time, he was even the vice chairman of that organization, which is called left, but it's not a Marxist, and certainly not a Marxist-Leninist organization. This is one of those organizations that split from Lenin, the Second International, and Lenin called them socialists in word, but chauvinists in reality. So it's important that we recognize the specific political base upon Manning's observations may be judged. So, for instance, Marable consistently throughout this book called the Nation of Islam a sect, you know, which is a judgment, not an observation. The Nation of Islam has had more influence on society than the Democratic Socialists of America, certainly on black people. And the meaning of a sect as a small breakaway group of a religious order is only used now to connote a jocular that's funny or illiterate character. But then in relationship to revolutionary Marxism, or Marxism-Leninism, the DSA would fit that description. I think Marable has to be judged by what he says, not by what others say he intended. As I said, the best thing about the book is it raises Malcolm X. Ultimately, it is Marable's own political line that renders the book weakened by his consistent attempts to reduce Malcolm's known qualities, his known political qualities, by all kinds of funny rumors of which have no substantiation, but then make you think of Malcolm differently than when you thought of him before. For instance, even he says they're rumored. Is there, for instance, any real evidence of Malcolm's and Betty's sexual trysts? People who knew Charles Kenyatta, for instance, in Harlem, quickly recall a vainglorious fool and a liar. Could much of this rumor actually have come from Marable's official sources? If you use the FBI, the CIA, boss, you know, New York Police Department, as well as those people in the Nation of Islam who hated him, you know, for instance, this sentence about Malcolm, that evening Sharon 6X may have joined him in his hotel. That's inexcusable. Don't talk to me about may have. You know what I mean? That don't have any reality. When I wrote to FBI asking for our papers, my wife and I, the head of the FBI said there was no such thing. I had to get somebody else, Allen Ginsberg's lawyer, to ask them for the papers. We got 3,000 papers at a dime apiece. It was my wife, Amina, who said, you know, the way they got these papers locked up here, they got some part blanked out, and they got some part that they let you see. How you know the stuff they let you see is not intended to confuse you? So that's what we did. We got rid of the papers. But the point is, if you are using those papers as your sources, then why do you think they would tell you? These are the people that killed Malcolm X. You understand? Not the Nation of Islam. Not the Nation of Islam. There better be people in there jealous and all that, but the people who killed Malcolm X was the United States government. You better understand. And when you say social democrats, first of all, you're talking about people who are opponents of revolution. So that Amiri Baraka was opposed to the political logic of Malcolm's efforts to make a revolution. He dismisses the nation as a cult, a sect, dismissing the fact that even as a religious organization, the Nation of Islam had a direct political message. Most of the people that joined the Nation of Islam did not join that for Islam, no matter what Islam people want to think. They joined it because of the political line that was coming out of that line. And when you're going to make it seem like demanding 5 states is some Negro fantasy, the great Lenin demanded 5 states in the United States, which he called the Black Belt South, because that was the most intense, existence of black people in the South. The Afro-American nation in the Black Belt South, that's something that came out of the communist movement in the 20s. It was not just some fantasy that, Elijah Muhammad thought. But I think the question is that Marable never understood the revolutionary aspect of the black liberation movement. I would say this, despite the left, you're going to DSA, the CP, all of those organizations, that the most revolutionary presence in the United States has been the black liberation movement. No matter what it might seem like on paper, you've got all kinds of things happening. But in reality, on these streets every day, Malcolm X, you understand? Down there in them southern roads, marching, Martin Luther King. That was the revolution in this country. And still to this day, Obama, even though, he disappointed me with his bombing of Libya, still, that is the result. The legacy of the black liberation movement is Obama. Whether we like him or not, whether we support him or not, it is the black liberation movement that has been the most important political force in this country. And if you think that somehow the DSA or the Trots or some of those people are more revolutionary than the black liberation movement, that is your basic mistake, because that is not so, you see. And then Malcolm was moving to the left anyway, you understand? He was really felt limited by the fact that the nation would not do certain things like in California, you understand? And Malcolm felt that the nation should have been more aggressive, and he began to look at the black liberation movement and the civil rights movement. Dr. King was not just in his pulpit preaching. He was out there marching. You understand? Dr. King went to jail more than the Bloods or the Crips. So I don't think Marable understood the political legitimacy of Malcolm's black nationalism, and also how Malcolm's constant exposure to the revolutionary aspects of the civil rights movement and the more militant black liberation movement shaped his thinking, made his whole presentation more overtly political. And this was not only negative to, say, the NOI bureaucracy, as he points out, but it was even more dangerous to the FBI and the CIA and the state. Why? Because they understood that Malcolm was much safer in the nation talking about the white man as the devil than he was traveling around the world preaching revolution.